Welcome to Stay Tuned with Intetics. Our next episode will be dedicated to MedTech industry, which is going through most transformative periods in its history. Because AI is reshaping clinical workflows, connected devices are generating really enormous, unprecedented volumes of data, and healthcare organizations are really under growing pressure adopting the strict regulatory requirements and operating in a such complexity environment. At the same time, bringing innovation to markets has never been more challenging. The companies must balance between the speed, cybersecurity, data privacy, interoperability, FDA and RDR compliance, and real-world evidence, and whatever. While healthcare providers are expecting that the technology should seamlessly integrate into already overloaded environments. So today we'll discuss the biggest challenges that the tech market product companies face when they are trying to bring innovation to market, and why software product teams are stuck in a queue and documentation loops. So joining us today, Anton Sheiko, program manager, MedTech and Healthcare at Intetics. Anton has extensive experience building complex medical software products and navigating really rigorous FDA and MDR approval processes. So, Anton, thank you for joining us today, and maybe a few words about yourself.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk, and I will probably introduce myself. So I have more than 20 years of experience in IT, and over the last 10 years, my role was heavily focused on project and delivery management. And for last 6 years, I was involved in a number of medtech products and projects, working at the intersection of engineering, of product development, and regulatory requirements.
Great, Anton. So, let's maybe start with what's going on the medtech market in terms of software development. And what is the biggest shift that you've seen in medtech product development? Where is it now?
I would say it's technology complexity and regulatory pressure. So, product today became more software driven, specifically AI. And at the same time, FDA and the MDR requirements get stricter. What's interesting, those two factors reinforce each other. Higher complexity means that compliance will be harder, and strict regulation increases effort required to develop and validate the product.
Got it. And it to add, definitely everybody is thinking of what's going on then with AI when you add AI to your product. So what makes AI-based medtech product harder to validate than compared to, for example, traditional software?
I would say that modern medtech products with AI are much more dynamic. And previously, FDA would expect just one-time approval, and today they would expect life cycle management and post-market monitoring. Having an AI product, you have to define a predetermined change control plan, and you have to define what changes will be allowed to your model, what is your validation approach, and what limits should be applied. So basically, AI updates are allowed, but you have to plan them upfront.
And if we're coming closer to the whole product development, where do medtech companies still underestimate the gap between the product and so between the prototype and the product that can really survive the clinical reality?
I would say that the biggest gap is clinical and regulatory evidence. So definitely, working prototype doesn't mean clinically validated product. Team often needs representative data, clear endpoints, and proper studies, and sometimes part of that is missed. For major startups, the challenge shift towards reliability and integration. The product can work technically, but struggles to appear in a complex, real clinical environment with different workflows, with different data quality, with different user behaviors and hospital systems.
So you mentioned that a lot can be missed. Then what needs to be designed, actually the product team should think just at the beginning when they're just initiating what should be designed from that day
Mhm.
one. And that's something, for example, that they used to add later, used to think about later. What's changing that?
I would say it's compliance, evidence, and clinical validation. So in the past, this is something to be considered later. And today, those two factors should be embedded into product design. It affects architecture, it affects data collection, and even product functionality. Cybersecurity is another area that is extremely difficult to add later and expensive. If we would talk about a checklist, I would say it's understanding your submission pathway and applicable standards. It's identify your risks and how they are going to mitigate it. It's define how safety and effectiveness will be proven. It's building with compliance, scalability, and testing in mind, and share planning for cybersecurity and governance. Just let me provide an example. The company worked on a blue testing platform, and their software combined vital signs, dashboards, and others. And the software was built as a monolith. And on a later stage, they identified they miss the proper part of IEC 62304 standard in their software, like the traceability between requirements, between architecture, between software models and tests. So basically, they had to redo the application retroactively and redesign the codebase according to it. A result was major rework and submission delay.
Okay, got it. But our life is much wider and it's much more rigorous. And let's imagine we are in the day 100. What are three steps, key steps that CTO should take to make sure that the product will stay compliant? This is inside this lab. What do you think?
We had a similar case actually. The company decided to reposition their product. They have a good product and a strong team, but FDA submission was not part of their initial strategies, just a reply based on what we did. So the steps are following its process and product audit, then gap analysis involving FDA expert to identify what's missed according to the intended regulatory pathway. Then risk assessment and defining the realistic submission roadmap.
Got it. So should be planned and executed clear. But let's shift the bit that, for example, you've joined halfway through. What would be the early signals that the product is really heading to travel? What would signal?
I would recommend checking at least 4 points. First is no issues in planning, in scope, and in general. Second thing, if the team is building features without understanding how they are going approved and validated, it could be a bad sign. The next thing to check is product fits into clinical workflow and also ensure that traceability is good enough to demonstrate compliance.
Okay, got it. Maybe let's shift to architectural problems. If we can somehow identify, maybe you see the patterns, but what would be the biggest architectural mistake that can be made already in early development?
I would say there could be many on different stages and different areas. I would give an example when regulatory pathway wasn't clearly defined early on. The company worked on product that was designed for remote monitoring, and it has several models and was built as a monolith. And one of the models, others, can be classified by FDA at highest risk level. So once team recognize that, they understand that it will lead to massive increase in testing, in documentation and validation, and they have to redo the architecture and isolating critical functionality others from the rest of software.
Got to thank you for an example. And from your personal experience, building the product is very much complex and then there are a lot of things you have to think about and plan beforehand. But as well, there's a part where you have to translate the requirements into product features. And what was the most painful lesson that you learned about translating clinical needs into product requirements?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, actually. For me, I think it person is clinicals often describe solutions and not problems. And if you translate that directly into the requirements, you risk optimizing the wrong thing. So let me explain by example. The team worked on surgical planning software with quite complex 3D interface, and the client requested additional functionality for visual validation. That functionality led to performance issues on target hardware, and the team spent some effort trying to optimize the performance and fighting with it. However, while observing how the product is used, we identified that the problem actually unfair client fair was actually clicking wrong anatomical structure in a dense 3D view. So basically, we suggested much simple solution, adding visual assistance, and it was accepted, and it saves quite huge effort for optimization. So basically, what I learned that I need to understand workflow and deep dive into context.
Okay, got it. You have to always think about the clinical workflow in order to understand what really is meant. That's a great example. Let's get more to product development decisions. Can you share a few maybe examples or where the product development decision looked very expensive at the beginning, but really paid off later?
It's quite broad area, and I would provide kind of general answer. So basically, I would recommend investing in quality and regulatory foundation early, and build for validation, not just for demonstration. So that's usually the most expensive decision early on and cheapest.
So, from what I hear, a major problem that most tech companies that really create themselves is delaying adopting the regulatory requirements. Is that a kind of correct assumption that I'm making?
Yes, partially. So the real problem is treating regulatory requirements as a final checkpoint and not a design input. That's what creates most of the rework and delays.
Got it. And what's now harder in MedTech? Like building the product, proving that it can really work, trying to integrate this into a clinical workflow, or prove that it can have economic values. Where you see these challenges going around, or maybe there are other spaces where you see it can go.
Product implementation could be quite difficult, and validation is even more difficult. But I think most challenging part is proving economic value, which could depend on workflow, on incentives, on reimbursements. So basically, clinically effective product doesn't mean product that is going to be adopted, and without economic value, adoption could fail. So I would say challenge is not just building the right product, but building the entire path to its adoption.
So let's come to the product teams. Maybe dwell a bit. What separates math teams that launch from those get stuck in the endless validation, documentation, or redesign loops? So where is this?
I think endless design and validation loops could indicate a sign of a late decision. So basically, what separates successful team is early alignment on development, on standards, and validation. I would say that strong teams can avoid late surprises.
And maybe just to sum up, what will separate the leading medtech companies from the rest, let's say, over next 5 years?
I think it's better execution. So technologies and data becoming more and more accessible, and many companies have similar tools and capabilities. So winning teams, I think it's about consistent delivery in fast-changing environments, about making the right decisions early and avoid costly works later. So basically, from my perspective, success is about bringing the product to the market and doing it reliably.
Got it. So, Tom, at this point, I thank you for your thoughts, for the shared experience, and just say some words to sum up that it sounds all to me that the most important thing is to follow the discipline of planning and definitely delivery. The second important thing that I really mark for myself is to avoid wishful thinking. That you probably think that you can accomplish this, but if it's not planned, if it's not there on your table, so it may not ever happen, and that can greatly influence the time to market as well as the price and the cost for the product. And regulatory requirements as getting is something that the product team should really get up and go to bed. That's something they have to think a lot about while creating the product. And the most persuasive thing for the most persuasive factor, I would say, is the proving the economic value of a product. So that's something that you are keeping in mind from beginning up to end. So those are great points, and I hope that our audience find this useful. Guys, thanks a lot for joining us. Thanks a lot for watching. And if you want to get more, please stay with us and stay tuned with Intetics. Anton, thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.